So when Jim had asked me to get into the Mr. Mortgage show, I probably canceled about 15 times. I was going to be one of the 13 times. Unlucky 13. And I asked him if I could kind of flip the script because he's been so generous and so nice and interviews all of us. But I felt as though it was important to ask Jim questions about why I love him so much and things so that I can promote him and why I just adore this guy altogether and wanted to kind of give him back on how he got into the industry and some other things. So first, I would like to ask Jim, how did you get into mortgages and what goals do you have?
So I have a funny story for that. My brother was in the mortgage industry before me, and I was working at Raymore and Flanagan, and I was a sales manager. And I was promoted, was doing pretty good with Raymore and Flanagan, had a little misunderstanding with one of the higher ups in the company. I sent an email who I thought to my team of 25 salespeople. It actually went to the entire company of Raymore and Flanagan.
Oh. It wasn't a good email then.
No, it was great.
Oh, okay.
It was a Sunday morning motivational quote or whatever, and I got like 37 emails back from people that were like, "Hey, thanks, I really needed that." I got one email back from the I don't want to say her name, but she was like the third in command or whatever. Okay. She's like, I just want to let you know you're suspended for a week. You've abused company material. You're not allowed to promote things through the email. And this was like literally MS-DOS kind of stuff. We're talking about like 2000, 2001. It was a antiquated system that Raymore and Flanagan had at the time. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so I called, I had the cell phone number of one of the owners, and I called them up and I'm like, hey, listen, this is stupid and I'm not going to take a 1 week suspension. If you're going to suspend me, I quit. I'll put my notice in and I'll leave and I'll go do something else. Because I won't take it. And he was like, she's just got a bug up her ass. She's just freaking out. Don't worry about it. He was like, I'll write you a personal check. I'll cover the loss of it, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm not doing it. It's going to be on my permanent record.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for it. I did nothing wrong. I said I can forward you the 37 emails from people all across the country or all across the Eastern Seaboard, which is where they are, of people thanking me for the motivational quote. It was a mistake. And it wasn't abusing company stuff. And the next day, they got back to me and said, hey, look, she doesn't want to move on it. So I called my brother, and I was like, I really don't know what I'm going to do because I kind of put my foot down, and I'm probably going to quit. And he was like, well, why don't you try the mortgage industry? And I said, I don't know. Like, I've been in sales for a while. This company, I got a sales manager job. I make... I got $100,000 a year salary. I make some bonus and commissions. And my brother was like, well, I've been doing mortgages for a couple of years, and I don't want to tell you the number that he said, but he's like, I haven't made less than this. And I was like, you son of a bitch, you live in the same house with me. How come you're not telling me that you're making that kind of money doing mortgages? So we talked, and he got me an interview at the company that he worked at. I went on the interview. I actually talk about this in the book that I wrote. I went on the interview, and the manager called my brother and said, he's not going to make it, but I'm going to give him the job just as a favor to you. So I'll put him in the class, and we'll see how he does. And that was 21 years ago.
Really? I didn't know you were doing it that long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2001, 2002, I started in a cubicle getting phone calls and back when LendingTree was the really big thing and the first of the recent refi booms came on. We were talking about interest rates with the previous person, and rates were in the 6s, and I was refinancing people that were in the 9s or 10s, and I was getting them 6.5, and they thought it was the greatest thing in the world. So people are so skewed right now with their interest rate things because rates were so low for a while. But like we talked about, I've been doing it for 21 years. And, you know, the time period of that 21 years that rates started with the 3 is probably like 11 months, you know? And the rest of the time it's been 5s, 4s, a little bit of 6s, but, you know, it's a crazy market. But that's how I got my start, was Paul Conti's team, Nation's Home Mortgage, Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Do you mind if I talk about how I met you?
No.
Okay, so cool. How I met
Wait, but so there's something that I'm going to tell you when you talk about this that we've never talked about before, but go ahead.
Okay, so I've been a realtor for 17 years, and I've used pretty much every mortgage lender that I've tried a whole bunch of different ones. I got a random call one day from a landlord who said that he wanted to sell his property to his tenant. The guy was already pre-approved, and could I put it together? I said, absolutely. I said, how'd you find me? He goes, I Googled realtors in Mantua and your name came up. And I was like, okay. So I happened to call the client. He told me he was pre-approved with Jim. I looked it up on Facebook. We had 1,300 and some mutual friends. And I'm like, how do I not know about this guy? That makes no sense to me. So I added him as a friend on Facebook. We got talking, and instantly I fell in love with him. I fell in love with him for number one, because of certain things that he did to get that client this property. But more importantly, I fell in love with him because he was always giving back. I met him around like October, and then he was doing a Thanksgiving event where he was doing something on Thanksgiving Day, and he was giving back to the community. And then, as a matter of fact, once we put the deal together, it was so effortless. That following year, his company, which was Envoy, I guess at the time.
At the time, it was Envoy, yeah.
They did a drawing. I think it was the whole country.
Yeah.
It was the whole entire country who did a loan and bought a house this particular year. Our client's name happened to get pulled, where that company was going to pay 1 month mortgage for him, which was like $1,800 to $2,000. So the client was not aware, and it was going to be on Channel 6 News. So I was in a closing. I left. I met up with them. We had to like find George. He was like working, and we're like trying to get him to like come. It was like, anyway, Channel 6 was there. We presented him with the check.
We popped out of the bushes.
Yeah, we popped out the bushes, and we like gave it to him, and it was on Channel 6. I'm like, this guy's awesome. And then it kind of just segued from there. He was involved in a group with Devin Denofa, who's also very motivational, and who then put me in contact with Brandon Bringingham, if I'm saying it right. Mm-hmm. Like, there's just a huge network of people that are just so inspiring. In addition to that, Jim he was losing weight, he was writing a book, he was having a kid. I mean, this guy does it all. He doesn't give up, he's transparent. If he fails, he admits it, he tries to make himself better. And with me in all my scenarios, I need people in my corner that are kind of have the same mindset. So I just gravitated to him pretty much instantly. So I try to give Jim as much business as possible. I mean, obviously there's scenarios that you can't, but every which way that I can, I always like to use him, just because I just think he's a wonderful human being, along with everybody in his company, including Chris and Frankie and everybody else. So again, when he invited me to be on the show when it first started and I kept canceling, I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? He's promoting all these realtors, but there's nothing that's being told about Jim and his company and what he's all about. So I made it, I told him today when I arrived, he didn't know, that I asked if I can also add a little segment to promote him as well, because I feel as though that's necessary. So what do you... This is
the funny part. No, it's not bad.
Okay.
So George is my buddy. And I've known him for some years, and he was trying to buy the property that he was renting, he was living at, and he calls me up and he's like, "Yo, the seller wants to use this realtor," and I was like, "That's stupid. Why would you use a realtor? You already have someone in place to do it. Like, a realtor normally finds the buyer. You already have the buyer. That doesn't sound like it makes a lot of sense." And I didn't know the seller really well, but I knew who he was, and I had met him, and I was like, this is crazy. And he's like, oh, well, he's kind of adamant about doing it. And I was like, oh, whatever, then that's fine. I was like, that's crazy. I was like, I thought I already actually did a contract up and I had everything done. And I was like, you can do it, because I had met with them a couple different times. They had talked about buying the place for like a year. And I was like, he can do whatever he wants. That's fine. If he wants to do a realtor. And that's when they introduced me to you, and I was like, it's great. And then through the years, as I got to know you better and all that stuff, I was like, man, see, now, if I would have been a jerk and been like, George, this is stupid, tell her to go.
Pound sand.
Yeah. but I was like, and I knew with the first conversation that we had, what I thought was going to happen, because that happened before, would be a realtor was trying to weasel their way into a deal so they could squeeze the seller for 6% and not do anything, and blah, 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 blah. And then we had a conversation, and you were like, oh no, this is the case, and this is the case, and I'm going to do this. And I was like, oh, she's not like the scummy realtors that I fight with, because it happened a couple different times throughout the years where I had the buyer already in place, we were almost done, and then somehow a realtor gets involved, and now they want to change everything, blah, blah, blah. And that wasn't like that with you. And I just remembered the first conversation. I was like, oh, she's not like all the rest of these other money hungry people that are trying to weasel in and take money from the seller. You were really, really cool about it. And you did have George's best interest at hand, even though the seller had contacted you. And I was like, oh. So then...
Not to cut you off, but what I did do was I did it for a flat rate because he was going to get an attorney.
Yeah.
So I was like, you can get an attorney, but I want to represent George. Can he do a home inspection? He said yes. I'm like, well, if I'm representing him, and I did get permission from my boss, and we did it for like a flat rate. So basically, I was like a transaction broker, but I wanted George to have a voice because I didn't want him to be uncomfortable with the landlord and not be able to approach him for like repairs or this or that. And the seller was actually willing to do the repairs. So my boss was actually fortunate. He blessed me in letting me do it for a very low flat rate, which was less than an attorney. And I told him, you could use an attorney, but if you use me, you're going to get me after 5 o'clock. You're going to get me at 10 o'clock at night. You're going to be at 7 in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the home inspection. I'm going to negotiate for you. And then I think with the flat rate, I think Gary paid for all of it, or they might have split it. But I was blessed to meet him because he's just such a great guy.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that you were so close to him.
Yeah.
That's I'm like, who's this lender that I don't know that we have 1,300 mutual friends? And then I'm like, it was like the strangest.
Yeah. Coincidence.
And it just snowballed from there.
And normally, like I said, I would have probably been more of a jerk. But if the phone conversation that we had didn't go as good as it went, I would have been a bigger jerk about him and like, George, this is stupid. But then when you, like I said, you were talking and you immediately were like, oh no, this is what I'm doing here. And I was like, not that bad. And then when George got picked, so the way it worked for Envoy, they had this program called Gift of Home, and every month they picked one person from each region. So there were 3 regions of Envoy. One customer in the last 12 calendar months, which is thousands of people. They contacted us and said, hey, pick one person that you closed and give us their name. And they put 42 people in a hat and picked one name, and George happened to be the person that they picked.
And this guy's a hustler. Like, he has a family.
We had to go. Yeah. His house is in Gloucester City, and he was working in like Drexel Hill, Pennsylvania, or something crazy like that. We had to go. He was working in an apartment complex. He's a mason. He was doing some brickwork in an apartment complex. We had to go and hide in the bushes of an apartment complex and jump out and surprise him with this check. And they had camera crews, and the TV station was there. And
it was fun.
It was a really cool time. It was a really cool event to be a part of. And
I didn't know you that well, and you invited me, which I thought was really nice.
Yeah, well, I wanted you to be a part of it because you were a part of the transaction. And I just could tell that I like people that have really good hearts. You know what I mean? Like, I like people that are real.
Hearts.
All the stuff I do in my life.
I'm 2 years old, sorry.
I want real people, you know what I mean? And that's not really common in this business, you know what I mean? Like, there are a bunch of people in this industry, on the mortgage side, on the real estate side, on every side, that their main focus is the paycheck at the end of the day, and they will do things that may not be in the buyer/borrower's best interest just to make sure the deal closes. And that's not the type of person that you are. And I could tell, like, right away when you talked about the flat fee thing, I was like, that's awesome. Like, that's not something I would have ever even thought of doing, and that doesn't seem at all like she's trying to weasel her way into this. So it was cool. And then we've done a couple deals through that, and it's good to be involved with people that are good. Like, I love working with people. I don't care if I do 1 deal or 10 deals with people. When the energy of the people is really, really good, I want to surround myself with as many of those people. And there are other people that don't have good energy, that do a ton of business that I don't want to work with.
Correct.
Because I don't want to be involved in their energy, you know? And I've been blessed enough to do a decent amount of business where I can be a little bit picky and I can say, I don't really want that. Now, the honest truth, which it's a little slow now, so if I don't like somebody, I'll throw them to Dreger, I'll throw them to Kramer, one of the other guys, like, yo, deal with this person because I don't really like. But it's good to work with honest, genuine people who are really out trying to help somebody. You know what I mean?
I'd rather someone dislike me for being brutally honest and true and real and transparent than to be two-faced. Like, that's just not who I am. If you don't like me because I'm very open about my life and everything that I do, then that's okay. Because I'm never going to change. Like, I am who I am. I'm very open about everything. If somebody asks me a question, I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to hide it. And again, like, it's kind of a lost art.
But you're like nuts when it comes to things. Like, you literally text me when you're supposed to go to an event, and you're like, I was at the hospital all night. I was getting chemo. I was getting this and that. So I'm going to be late, or I'm not going to make it. And you're like apologizing to me for going through all this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, are you kidding me? You know what I mean? Like, there's no need to apologize. You literally were in the hospital all night, you know, and you're like, I'm so sorry. And we joked around about canceling a couple different times, but I never felt like, I don't know, like, you always made it like it was this super important thing, and you were so disappointed that you had to cancel. And I was always just like, look, your health is the most important thing. Like, don't worry about it, you know, like, don't, I know it wasn't like you were home playing PlayStation and forgot about coming in. Like, there was always some serious things, and it's awesome to see you feeling good and getting back into it and feeling really good. So I'm glad you could make it in.
Yes. I'm
glad we could shoot this.
I appreciate you taking the time to let me support you too. Yeah. I also wanted to bring up about your book. Could you talk about that real quick?
Yeah. Okay.
Because that's inspiring too.
Yeah. So I wrote a book called Optimizing Failure. It's about the real quick Reader's Digest version of it is, I had a bunch of different businesses throughout my life. I had a restaurant when I was 18. I've done a bunch of different stuff. In 2011, I had a business with my brother that was an inch away from being a multi-million-dollar success. We had a verbal agreement with Snoop Dogg to be our sponsor.
Wow.
We had a bunch of different stuff that was going on, and at the very last minute, it all fell apart. And it was just a horrible time. And it took me probably 10 years to get over it, because I just didn't want to, I lost my courage or whatever it is, and I got to a point where I felt good again, and I wanted to take chances and take risks, and I felt like I should. I always want to help people. I love helping people. I love the concept that I can share a horrible experience that I went through, and it can help somebody else get through an experience, has always been baffling to me. So I wanted to do something to help people and reach out in case there were other people who were getting kicked in the teeth and failing and feeling like a loser. I wanted to do something to kind of help that.
Yeah. I mean, I get crazy messages from people I don't even talk to. They're like, oh my God, like, I was in bed sulking, I saw your smile and all that you're going through, and I'm like, wow, like, I mean, I'm just who I am. Mm-hmm. But if I can just help one person that day, I feel like, because there's other people like you know, like you or Devin or somebody like that always motivates me. Obviously, there's somebody has to motivate me, and there's somebody I have to motivate. So it's kind of like we all help each other out. So that's why I like being so open and transparent as well, because if there's anybody that I can help get through a bad day. One last question, because you always ask everybody else. Mm-hmm. If you can see anybody living or alive or dead, who would it be and why?
I answered this question once before, and I do it again. Okay. My best friend when I was 18 years old, Hallie Getz, killed himself right before we graduated from high school.
I'm sorry.
And I was completely shocked by it. I still don't understand it. I would love the chance to sit down with him and talk to him for a couple minutes and find out the why. I guess it doesn't really matter why, but find out why. And I felt like I failed as a friend, and I wish I could just have a couple minutes to talk to him. And I'm sure depending on how things go, I might have that opportunity at some point in time later on in my life as it ends. But that would be my person. I would love to sit down and talk to him and apologize for not being there for him when he needed me, you know?
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for today.
Thank you.